Hi, everyone. My name is Bethany. I am a convicted felon. Is that what you expected me to say when you saw me walking up here? When you think of the word felon, am I the image that immediately comes to mind? Do I look like a felon? Do you? So how did I get this label? We all make choices in life. I'm a convicted felon because I made a bad choice. I was 24 years old and I did something stupid for a boy. He was 28 years old, but really, he was a boy. I took drugs from my job at a veterinary clinic and I gave them to the guy I was dating. Specifically, I sold him a small amount of ketamine, an animal tranquilizer that can also be used by people to get high. What I didn't know is this: the man I was dating was working undercover for the police. 15 minutes after handing him the drugs, I was handcuffed and arrested in front of my coworkers. When I arrived at the jail, I called my mother, and this is what she said: "You are not my daughter. You are no longer welcome here. Do not come home." Those words broke me. They echoed through my mind during the 4 days that I spent in jail before I was released to await sentencing on December 7th, 2009. Just a few days earlier, I was working full-time and living with my parents. Now, I was unemployed, homeless, and facing felony charges. That same year, more than 3.3 million Americans were arrested on drug-related charges, according to the US Department of Justice. By 2010, people with felony convictions accounted for 8% of the adult population in the United States. 2 years after I was arrested, I was sentenced to 1 felony count delivery of ketamine. The judge sentenced me to 90 days in jail, 2.5 years on probation, and a 2.5-year prison sentence. The prison sentence was imposed and stayed, meaning if my probation was revoked, I would be sent to prison. I was ordered to pay $25 restitution to the veterinary clinic. Yes, that's right. I'm a convicted felon over $25 worth of drugs. What I did was wrong, and I am incredibly ashamed of my actions. I cannot begin to describe how sorry I am. And if I could go back and change the past, I would, but I can't. So all I can do is be a better person than who I once was and make better decisions in the future. I was approved to complete my 90-day jail sentence under house arrest while wearing a GPS monitoring ankle bracelet and an alcohol monitoring ankle bracelet. Every half hour, the alcohol monitoring ankle bracelet would loudly vibrate as it tested my skin for the presence of alcohol. For 1 hour each morning and each evening, I had to sit next to an electrical outlet and plug my GPS monitoring ankle bracelet into charge. Police officers conducted random searches of my apartment at all hours of the day and night. I was only allowed to leave my apartment to go to work. I successfully completed my 90-day house arrest sentence, and I continued regularly seeing my probation officer. A year into my sentence, my probation officer called me into her office. I was going back to jail on a probation hold while she investigated a tip about me. I had no idea what I had done wrong or how long I would be locked up for. Some of the other inmates told me they had been locked up for 6 months or longer on a probation hold. I felt terrified and defeated. That evening, I sat on the bunk of my jail cell with a noose made out of a bedsheet tied around my neck. I didn't actually know how to tie a hangman's noose, but each jail pod had a set of stairs leading to the second floor of cells. My plan was to tie the noose to the second floor railing and jump. My hope was that if the knot failed, the impact of falling 2 stories would break my neck and kill me. As I reached for my cell door, I stared up at the industrial gray walls with pen and pencil graffiti covering them, and I wondered if those walls would be the last images I would ever see. Is this really it? I thought. Will my death be payment enough for the mistakes and bad choices that I've made? I thought of everything I had already been through in my life, and I thought of everything I would never get the chance to experience if I decided to end my life. And I realized I couldn't go through with it. The punishment did not fit the crime. I took that noose off of my neck, and I decided that I am worth more than my worst act. Nothing came of the probation investigation, except that I lost 75 days of my life. My probation officer took me straight from jail to a halfway house, where I stayed for another 90 days. I was released from the halfway house, and I started my life over again for the second time. I successfully completed the remainder of my probation. I paid my $25 restitution, and my case is considered closed. I did the crime. I paid the time. Now I get the chance to move on and live my life, right? Wrong. No one would rent to me. No one would hire me. No one would give me a chance. Must have a clean record, they'd say. Sorry, our insurance won't allow us to hire felons. The incarceration rate in America is higher than any other country in the entire world. PolitiFact reports that by 2017, about 30% of all Americans had a criminal record. That's 30 out of every 100 people. About 32 out of every 100 people held a bachelor's degree in the US that same year, according to the US Census Bureau. That means you have almost the same likelihood of being arrested and charged in this country as you do of obtaining a bachelor's degree. In fact, the Wisconsin Budget Project reported that Wisconsin spends more on incarceration than it spends on the entire University of Wisconsin system. So we have mass incarceration combined with a criminal justice system that is designed for people to fail. In 2018, the Prison Policy Institute reported that formerly incarcerated people are unemployed at a rate of over 27%, an unemployment rate that is higher than the US unemployment rate during any time in history, including the Great Depression. So, where does a person live when they can't rent an apartment due to a past conviction? Where does a person turn when no place will hire them? What choices are left for them? Most likely, the only choices left for them are the same choices that led to their initial incarceration, and this cycle repeats itself. Our system is supposed to work in a do the crime, pay the time sort of way, but for felons, we never stop paying. My charge was for a nonviolent drug offense from 12 years ago, but there are many things that I still can't do. I can't work in healthcare, or at banks, or with children. At many places, I can't even volunteer. Felons are denied entrance to many countries. I live in Wisconsin, And we're so close to Canada, but I can never visit. Even though my charge had nothing to do with weapons or violence, as a felon, I'm permanently prohibited from purchasing or possessing a firearm, even if it's just for deer hunting. I can even be arrested if a gun is near me, such as in a car that I'm riding in. I understand that what I did was wrong, and I have paid for my mistakes. I have paid my $25 restitution. I have paid with jail time. I have paid with probation, and I have paid with a felony conviction permanently on my record. But all of these other things, being denied jobs, being banned from volunteering, being denied housing, having to explain my worst act to everyone I meet over and over again, these things were not listed as part of my punishment. I am so sorry that I stole from my employer, and I have paid for my mistakes, but I keep on paying. There will always be a box at the bottom of a job application that says, "Have you been convicted of a crime?" That box allows me to be discriminated against. That box serves future employers my worst act on a silver platter. Northwestern University reports there are more than 19,000 statutes in the United States that involve the denial of job opportunities for convicted felons. The university also reports that 60% of employers refuse to hire a person that has a criminal conviction. And when people can't get jobs, it increases their chances of reoffending. That little checkbox at the bottom of a job application causes more pain, suffering, and missed opportunities than you can begin to imagine. And it is time to consider whether we need to ban the box. This idea that we need to ban the box isn't something new. Proponents have been advocating for a ban for many years. A 2017 study by Economic Inquiry found that banning the box would increase the probability of public employment for those with convictions by about 30% on average. And it is beyond time that we ban it. We need to move our society from one of punishment and judgment to a society of forgiveness and mercy. If you're a business owner or you work in human resources, the next time you're looking through job applications and you start to discard the applicants that disclose they have a criminal history, remember, it's people like me that you're pushing aside. For those of you without a criminal history, the next time you're filling out a job application and you get to that checkbox at the bottom, instead of just skipping past, take a second to stop and think about what that checkbox really means to people like me. People are more than a checkbox at the bottom of a job application. We are more than the label that we're given of felon. We are more than the mistakes that we have made, and we deserve the chance to redeem ourselves. It's been 9 years since the day that I stood in a jail cell with a noose made out of a bedsheet tied around my neck. I drove past that same jail on my way to speak to all of you today. As I drove past, I flashed back to the smells and the fear and the nightmares, the feeling of not being in control of my own fate. And I thought to myself, haven't those of us who've been convicted and served our sentences paid for our mistakes? Should we be labeled for a lifetime for our one worst act? I looked up at that jail and I thought of how far I've come in 9 years, despite the obstacles that I've faced. I am a college graduate. I am a writer. I am the founder of a nonprofit. I am more than a convicted felon. And we are all worth so much more than our worst act.